In the technology industry today, something that everyone is talking about is Sidewalk Labs, particularly the project in Toronto. Tell us a little bit about that.
And we can go back to sort of the beginning of Sidewalk Labs, which essentially was an idea that Larry Page and our CEO, Dan Doctoroff, had about how can we enhance what's been going on in the smart cities context. I think Google, which created Alphabet, had been looking for different areas in which it, as a company, could expand and innovate. And smart cities was one that they felt like, I think we can do something here. I think technologies can be better used than they have been before. And Dan, being such the city person and the business person, and who had now time, because I think Michael Bloomberg came back to Bloomberg to run it, was just like, so passionate about the fact that cities could operate so much better, especially with the developments that he did in Hudson Yards, that they started it. So Dan, over a course of a couple of years with a small team at Sidewalk Labs, had been looking at different smart cities projects. I think they talk about looking at hundreds of them to kind of figure out what worked and what didn't work, and why hadn't, cities evolved at the same pace of so many other things in terms of the use of technology. And they came up with kind of this sort of book of areas that, you should holistically focus on, whether that was mobility, the public realm, buildings, different types of buildings, city services and how they're being provided, and have a solution for each of them, but bring it all together as one company or one entity working with government to make it better. Long story short, as they were going through this process, Waterfront Toronto issued an RFP. And the RFP was for Quayside, and they were looking for an innovation partner. And it was sort of kind of one of those things that just sort of naturally converge. They had a vision of wanting to do something different. They'd done lots of development, lots of great and interesting development in the waterfront. But they said, maybe we can think about this in a different way. So we're going to put out this RFP looking for an innovation partner to maybe take this parcel of land that they had, Quayside, in a different direction. We came upon, because we were doing all this research looking at cities, we came upon this RFP, and the company said, you know what? Maybe this is where we can apply this vision, because there's nothing there, right? You guys know this. There's just land. And one of the, I think, things that Dan envisioned was being able to sort of start from scratch. And we don't use the term now, but we talked at the time, or they talked at the time, about building a city from the internet up, from scratch. What would you do if you could do it from the beginning? And Quayside presented just that type of opportunity. So they put forward this ambitious plan, which I think really caught the attention of Waterfront Toronto. And so we won the award last October. And so we've been embarking since then on kind of a year-plus long, innovation and development plan, which essentially is fleshing out some of that vision that we put forward in the RFP, so that, things that we actually now think could be done, which are building off of that framework. But it's very exciting, because it is something that, you're starting kind of from a blank slate, and you sort of can make the decisions and the rules. And we have a great partner that we're working with as well, who understands Toronto and is giving us that information so that we can really build it, keeping that city and the needs of Toronto in mind as well.
I think a lot of people in Toronto are very excited about the thought of this smart city being built there, and excited about the potential that that project will bring to the rest of Toronto, especially for people interested in the technology space. There is, of course, the concern when we talk about smart cities about data. A lot of people think, well, if you're building it from the internet up, that means that you're going to be collecting data. Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, how would you respond to those people who have those concerns?
I think it's absolutely wise to have those concerns. I mean, in this day and age, I'm a consumer, I'm a mom, I'm a person who lives and interacts with the digital world on a daily basis, and seriously myself have questions about what information is being collected, how is it being used, and I think, as a company and as a leader at our company, we have a responsibility to be extremely clear and transparent and accountable for the data and information that we collect and use about people. It's people's information, it's people's data, and we understand very well that, especially in Canada, that privacy is a fundamental human right. And if we are going to attract anyone to want to live in this place that we're building, you have to feel safe. You have to feel as if your rights are being respected. You have to feel as if the data and information that you're using, that this company is collecting and using, is going to be sort of open and accessible and plainly detailed to you. And you have like things like meaningful consent and the ability to have maintain control. You shouldn't have to give that up. So I perfectly understand those concerns. And I think that because we're building it from the ground up, we're in a great position to address it, because we don't have the constraints of, oh, this thing was already built, you didn't think about privacy from the beginning, but now we have to sort of figure out how to make it work. Instead, we're taking the different approach, and it's actually something that Ann Cavoukian, who's a Torontonian, sort of championed around the world until it got, sort of taken on by the world, of this privacy by design. And what that simply means is that from the beginning, you're going to consider, why you have and want to collect certain information and data about people. What's the value of it? What's the value of it to your project? Do you need it? Can you minimize it? And if you do determine that it's something that is going to be beneficial, detail that, but then also figure out, are there ways to, de-identify it? Are there ways to not have the personal information and only take what you need? So I think for us, fundamentally, this is something that we understand the concerns, but we also think we have, a good way to resolve it. And what I would say is, the other thing that makes us unique is we're starting from the premise of we're building this city for people. We're not building this for data. We're not building this for information. We're building this to make the quality of life in cities better amongst different realms, whether that's having better traffic management systems, whether that's having, better utilization of your public spaces and parks, whether that's understanding more how, buildings can be better serviced and not just sort of sitting fallow or vacant for a period of time. Like, there are so many things about this that have nothing to do with sort of collecting personal data, and that's never our purpose. So we start off with a different purpose, and then we make sure that anything we're collecting aligns with that purpose and is benefiting people.
For you personally, in terms of being part of this project, what does it mean to you? Is there one word that you can use to describe how important this is in terms of the trajectory of your career?
One word. That's hard. What would I say in terms of the trajectory of my career? I would say ambitious. Meaning this project is ambitious, and at this time in my career, I was ready to sort of roll up my sleeves and dive into kind of, something that had a very lofty and ambitious goal that could help people. Like, it felt like now's the time. When I moved out to Silicon Valley over a decade ago, before I moved back to the East Coast, I went out there with the idea being that I'd work for a startup and help people build something. For a variety of reasons, downturns, life. I never worked for sort of a true startup. Netflix probably was the closest, because they were transitioning when I moved there to streaming, and so it was a very innovative time for them. But I was at the point where I was just like, you know what? I feel like I've learned so many different things over my career that I could be of value to a company and across a number of different disciplines and areas. And Sidewalk had this goal to make cities better for people, and that's the goal. It wasn't like, I'm going to, sell data, I'm going to acquire information, I'm just going to use technology. It's like, it wasn't tech for tech's sake, but it was tech forward. But it had all of those things that made me feel like this is the time to kind of help a company tackle an ambitious goal and see if we can be successful.